Welcome to our homily series on this fourth Sunday of the year. Our scripture readings will come from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18, verse 15 to 20. Second, Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 7, verse 32 to 35. And our gospel reading is from the Holy Gospel according to Mark, chapter 1, verse 21 to 28. And the good news I share with you today is that God's authority over us is love. God's authority over us is love. And because God's authority over us is love, our prayers today will be for the grace to submit to this authority of God and submit to it joyfully. To submit to God's authority joyfully. My friends, I know we all can say something about authority. We all have perceptions of authority. Either the way we have exercised it for good or for bad, or the way we imagine authority has been exercised over us for good or for bad. But whichever way you may think about this authority, either the way we exercise or the way it's exercised over us for good or for bad, there is one thing we know that authority always asks for. One thing authority demands is submission. Submission. Our first reading tells us how the people of Israel responded to divine authority, to God's authority, when He tried to speak to them in the midst of fire and thunder on the mountains. Their response was what? A response born out of fear. They were so frightened that God was going to kill them. And so this authority was such that they were scared that it could lead to their destruction. It was such that they requested that God no longer speaks to them directly, but that Moses can speak to them. That God's words, God's authority can be mediated through Moses. But in our gospel reading, we're able to realize that God's authority over us is not aimed at destruction. God's authority over us has no bad thing to it. God's over us is for something different. So the question then becomes, what is this God's authority aims to accomplish? What does divine authority aim to accomplish? Our scripture today helps us to see that God's authority aims to bring about the good news. Good news whether in words or good news or in action. God's authority, divine authority, aims to produce some good news, whether in words or in action. Divine authority aims to raise hope in people who are downtrodden, people who are living in a hopeless situation, to help them to realize there's hope again. So divine authority helps to bring hope in the way it accomplishes the things it effects. Divine authority, furthermore, confronts evil forces, evil situations, evil structures, evil institutions that are aimed at human destruction. Divine authority confronts them to subject them and to drive them away. God's authority produces healing and restores the human condition. And this authority of God we can point to in the history of salvation. You saw how divine authority was exercised over Pharaoh as mediated through Moses, over Pharaoh and his people, that made them to submit to let the people go. Divine authority was also seen at work when by words God dried the Red Sea for the people to pass through the land dry shore. Divine authority spoke and manna rained down from heaven. Divine authority spoke and water gush forth from the rocks. So we see divine authority through salvation history, what it comes to accomplish. It brings hope, it raises hope, it brings good news, it brings good actions, it brings some healing and restoration of the human condition. This is what divine authority comes to accomplish. And in the gospel too, we saw this same God's authority at work in the power as Jesus expressed them, that made people to say, this is a teaching with authority. It comes with power in proclaiming the good news. It comes with power in its action, in the healing that Jesus did, in the way he fed the people, in the way he confronted the evil leadership of the day, in the way he was able to raise the dead and do a lot of things. This is divine authority at work. And this is what people were able to say, this is something new with authority attached to it, because he spoke and it came to be, and what came to be was good, raising hope and destroying all that was aimed to destroy the human being. Now, when you see this act of divine authority, the natural response to it, you imagine, would have been what? For people to submit to this authority. And then it means submitting to God. However, we know that submission was not all that was had through this scripture readings proclaimed to us today. We know submission was not all felt in even our lives in the past, in the lives of our community, in the lives in our family, even in our church. We know it has not always been submission to this divine authority aimed for the good of others. In the first reading, people were asking God not to speak to them directly, lest they die, because they thought, their perception was it's going to destroy them. In the gospel, the story of the submission or response to the authority was what? Stay where you are. Let's stay where we are. We know who you are. You are the Holy One of God. Are you coming to destroy us? Remain where you are as it were. Leave us alone. So in the first one was an expression of holy fear. They know God meant good for them because it led them, but they were so frightened with this authority that they could not be in his presence, so they wanted mediated. But in this gospel account was what? One that feared, yes, it's leading to destruction, but it's not, we don't want you to be here. We want to accomplish the evil we want to accomplish. So let's see the response. The one born of holy fear, that yes, I love this authority, but I'm so scared to be in the presence of this authority. Another one said, I don't like this authority. I don't want you to be here so that I can accomplish the evil I intend to accomplish. So, divine authority aims to produce the good, but evil authority aims to produce destruction. So the question for you and I to answer is, do we want God's authority in our lives? And if we want God's authority in our lives, are we ready to submit to God's authority? What is our perception of divine authority? Do we perceive it to bring about something good, or do we perceive it to be our destruction? Do we want to be in direct touch with this authority, or do we want it to be mediated? The people in the first reading wanted divine authority to be mediated, whereas the man possessed by the evil spirit does not even want the divine authority to be felt around where he was. That's why we said the other one was a holy fear, but then the one of the Old Testament, but the one of the gospel was one that is born of evil intent, that does not want divine authority to be felt anywhere it stays. So where do you fall in this spectrum? In your response to divine authority? And do you want it to be mediated? Or do you want to stand in contact with it? Those who wanted it mediated did so because they feared it would destroy them, while those who don't want it at all had only one intention: to destroy the human agent. And it is evil. So why you resist divine authority? Is it because you are evil and you want to destroy the human agent? Or is it out of holy fear? Now, as much as God's authority was for the good of the human being, as much as God's authority was good and acknowledged by people, but out of holy fear, they wanted it to be mediated. I know even till today, divine authority has continued to be mediated as God accepted those fear that people had. When they said, let Moses speak to us, and Moses told the people, yes, God has accepted, I will speak to him directly. And then he went on in that scripture reading that after him, God is going to raise a prophet who will also mediate and speak to the people God's authority. This authority of God, mediated through the prophets, mediated through the apostles, mediated through Christ and in the church of which you and I are members. So the implication is that divine authority can be mediated through me or through you. Through all of us, divine authority can be mediated. But unfortunately, many people have exploited this situation that divine authority can be mediated through us. They've exploited it for evil purposes, for heinous purposes, for corrupt purposes, for exploitative purposes. That is very unfortunate. But the test of it all is, how do you exercise that authority? Is it to produce good news in words or action, or is it to effect evil? Whether you are a minister or a lay person, the divine authority can be mediated through you. But when it is mediated, is it to produce good news? Is it to raise hope in people? Is it to dispel and expel evil forces that attack to destroy the human condition? Or is it to further oppress the human condition, exploit the human condition, possess the human condition, and make the human condition and human being useless and wasted? Do we exercise our claimed divine authority because of some self-enrichment and for self-glory? Now, Paul was such a mediator of divine authority. And his mediation of divine authority was in speaking about a good for the human being. But this good, he says to us today, is one that helps us to understand that piety is expected of all of us. But for some people, it should be more intense than the others. And so he gave the distinction. A married person, yes, is divided, pleasing the husband or the wife, the care of the family, and then devotion to God. But a single person like myself and the many brothers and sisters out there who are single, all the single ladies, all the single men, and all of us, yes. Divine authority has spoken to us today that challenges us that we should have a greater devotion to God, a greater piety in our relationship with God and in our express and embrace of divine authority, because we don't have that division and distraction of a husband or a wife or a baby crying or a child going sick that needed hospital or the school runs. Those things are not there for you. So how do you embrace divine authority and live divine authority? In my native language, we say that it is the firewood that you gather during the summer that you use during the winter. If you are single today, I repeat, and you do not have devotion to God, you do not spend time for God, you do not attend to the things of God, what reason are you going to give? Is it because the husband needs some attention? Is it because the baby is crying? Is it because of the school run? Is it because of what? That you cannot give time to God adequately and fully. What's your attitude to divine authority, seeking and asking you, give your time to God? My life's time, I will give God my life's time. My life's time, I will give God my life's time. If I give God my life's time, He will take care of me. He will never, never let me down. I will give God my life's time. That's the challenge for you, for me, my friends. Your perception of divine authority determines how you respond to divine authority. But know today, divine authority aims for our good. If you cannot embrace it and you want it to be shifted out, it's because you intend evil. And may God save you and I from intending evil, effecting evil, and wreaking evil in the human condition. May God bless His word in us, and may He help us to understand that God's authority over us is love. And so submit to it with joy, because we know it's for our good. Peace be with you, my friends, and I'll see you again next week.